Today I'm talking about obsessive intrusive thoughts, actually the obsessive form of OCD. Some people call it Pure O, and what to do about those thoughts. Hi, I'm Paige Pradko. Welcome to Therapy for a Better Life. So obsessive intrusive thoughts are more than little worries. They are recurrent, unwanted thoughts. And sometimes they can be horrible thoughts, scary thoughts, violent thoughts, humiliating thoughts. And, I work with people that have these thoughts, and I have found that they're some of the loveliest, nicest people that I've ever met. If you are a person that has these obsessive intrusive thoughts, I want to speak directly to you. I want you to know, number one, that you are not your thoughts. We have these crazy minds, and sometimes they have these crazy thoughts. Number two, your thoughts are not in control of you. Your OCD is not in control of you. You are in control of you, and you are the only one that can control your behaviors, not your OCD. I want you to know something else, that the first time that you had this thought, whatever the intrusive, fearful thought is, the first time you had it, you actually activated your amygdala, the fear center of the brain, and you created a pairing of the fearful thought with the fear response that gets initiated in the amygdala. And therefore, we have to use a certain type of therapy in order to undo the pairing. And that therapy is called exposure therapy, which I'm going to talk a little bit about. But first of all, I just want to review a little bit about some commonalities that people have that have these type of OCD or Pure O thoughts. First of all, they are people that have difficulty tolerating uncertainty in their life, tolerating doubt. They tend to take their thoughts seriously. Really, they look at their thoughts as being significant and true. They also tend to have more of these thoughts during stressful times of their life. Times like starting a new job, or maybe making a move, or starting a new relationship, or ending a relationship, or having a child, or going to university. Any of these kinds of changes and other changes in their life just cause these symptoms to increase. Stress in general, whether it's positive or negative stress, has that effect. So what do we do about these thoughts when they happen? I'm going to review 4 methods on dealing with obsessive intrusive thoughts. So the first that I've already said is exposure therapy. We're going to do exposure response prevention, ERP. It is the gold standard in treating OCD. Now, how do you do that when you don't actually have a compulsive behavior? Well, if you can picture having one of these obsessive intrusive thoughts right now, people do things to not have the thought. And so some of those things include, some people do praying in their head. Some people might repeat different words or phrases in their head. They might do counting in their head. They might seek reassurance from someone that they're really not losing their mind and they're not going crazy. They might insist on not being alone. They might try to distract themselves or relax, or something that takes the thought away. Now, all of these type of behaviors are actually compulsive behaviors that are reinforcing the intrusive obsessive thought. And so during exposure therapy, you have to expose yourself to the thought for a long time. You have to kind of keep yourself in the thought, really lean into it, really feel it, feel the anxiety that goes along with it. It's a very uncomfortable feeling, but you have to stay in it. Now, how I keep my clients in the thought is I may have them repeating out loud what the thought is. I may have them repeating trigger words that really scare them and trigger them into that fearful place. We have to get their brains anxious in order for the exposure to work. I may have them record themselves saying fearful thoughts, saying the trigger words, giving the whole scenario of the obsessive thought so that they can stay with it. Remember that you have to be anxious for exposure to work. We stay with it long enough for that anxiety to come down on its own. And it's a different amount of time for everybody, but I say at least until that anxiety comes down about halfway. Now, I have a very detailed video on how to do ERP and exposure therapy, and it's coming out in a few weeks. So I really do encourage you to watch that video if you have more questions on ERP. But what ERP does is it habituates us to whatever that image is, the fearful thought or the urge. It habituates us to that thought. And what that means is, like, if you were watching a scary movie and you kept watching the scary scene over and over and over and over and over, eventually you will have no reaction at all. Won't scare you, you won't have any anxiety, won't bother you at all. And so that's what habituation is, and that's what we want to do with these scary thoughts or intrusive thoughts with exposure response prevention therapy. Now, the next method of treatment is called strategic exposure therapy. And I learned this from Dr. Reed Wilson. He almost wants you to seek out these uncomfortable thoughts. And so when you actually get an uncomfortable thought, he wants you to stay with it. So it's a little bit different than a planned exposure. Every time you have the intrusive thought, he wants you to stay with the thought, stay with the feeling until that anxiety goes away on its own. And he also talks about something called dissociate and absorption. So what this means is, if you picture OCD separate from you, we're going to externalize it. We're going to picture it as, let's say, a big blobby monster, and we're going to call it Gus. He wants you to externalize it, picture it, give it an image, give it a name. It's separate from you. And we're going to dissociate from OCD, from this obsessive thought. That's the thought over there. That's Gus. This is us. And he wants to maybe, like, let's say you're just this little tiny stick figure, because Gus, the OCD thought, is a monster. He's huge. You're just this little stick figure. You creating a louder voice of your own thought. So if OCD thought, the monster Gus, is saying, you're going to lose control and you're going to go crazy and you're going to do this horrible thing, your thought has to get louder of, I am not going crazy. I haven't gone crazy. I have never done that horrible thing. I am not going to do that horrible thing. And so he wants your voice to become louder. And so much so that now you picture OCD getting smaller. So now Gus is just a tiny little monster, and you are much bigger and much stronger. And this is kind of called absorbing your voice and dissociating, separating from OCD. I like both methods, and I actually explain both methods to clients, and we decide which one we're going to do. Sometimes we actually do both. Now, the third method I also combine with exposure therapy, and it's called cognitive therapy. It's a part of CBT. And there's two types of cognitive therapy I will do with someone that has obsessive thoughts. And the first is going to be challenging the thought. We're going to do cognitive reconstructing, where we identify the thought, we label it, how are we distorting reality, and we try to come up with a more rational, logical thought. And the next method is called checking the facts, or examining the evidence, and we are going to look at what evidence is there for this thought, that it's true, and what evidence is against it. And both of these methods I have done videos on, and I will leave the links for cognitive restructuring and examining the evidence or checking the facts. I'll leave those links in the description. And finally, the last method that I like clients to be aware of and to use is a method of visualization. I like them to visualize their thoughts in a couple different forms. They might visualize their thoughts as just clouds. We can't control how fast the clouds go. They just have their own time that they come and go. We don't have control over them. And I have a video that I did on visualizations. It happens to be my favorite video because Jay, who does my graphics, really did a wonderful job with designing and doing graphics on the visualizations. So I'm going to put a link to that video, and I hope you check it out. It's really a great video. Now, I covered 4 methods of treating obsessive intrusive thoughts. I like all 4 methods. I use them all, and sometimes I use them all at the same time. So please experiment with those methods and let me know which ones you like. If you like this video, if you learned something, please remember to click the like button, and don't forget to subscribe. I try to select some interesting topics that I think will help people every week, and my videos come out on Mondays. And please leave me a comment if you have a question, if you will let me know which one of these that you think you're going to try, and any other question you might have, and even if you have an idea of what you'd like me to talk about on another video. I will certainly like to know that information. So until next time, I will see you in session. Take care. Bye-bye.